right, so we are continuing our What to Watch series. Last week we talked about what to watch on HBO Max, and this week we're shifting our focus over to Disney Plus. But if you're new to this series and you missed last week's episode, make sure you check that one out if you're into HBO Max. And also, if you're not sure what we're doing here, it's pretty simple. We're just giving our recommendations of what to watch on some of these major streaming platforms. And we basically will each give our own top five. And the way I approached this week, Adam, was to not include the obvious choices. Like we'll get to those, but like Star Wars and Marvel, of course, I could recommend those all day. But I wanted to throw in some things that maybe people haven't watched yet, or maybe they have. I don't know, maybe they haven't, but just wanted to throw some of those in there as well.
Yeah, and like you said, we will circle around to those obvious things. We're actually last week we had honorable mentions. This week we're going to rename that to obvious mentions, and so we're going to cover some stuff
There
there
you go.
because there is some things in Marvel that I would like to go off on instead of just MCU. So, but we will circle around to that at the end.
And it's my understanding that we actually received a couple voicemails too that we're going to play on the
Yes,
show.
yes,
Um, yeah, so a couple people we might know
yeah.
just a little bit. Um, but yeah, Adam, do you want to start with are your top five in any particular order, or mine or not? But
No, no, not in really any order. I actually kind of
okay.
looked at your list and kind of kept things in maybe like a genre type.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, just things that relate to each
I,
other,
s-
I guess.
I, s-
So
I s- yeah, I see what you did there.
I'm actually going to start off here with a musical. Some earlier Disney stuff, which is all classic stuff. But the most classic of those classic Disney movies, for me, live action anyway, would be Mary Poppins. Um, some of my favorite Disney music, including one of my favorite Disney songs in Feed the Birds. I love Feed the Birds. Gives me chills every single time. Um, Mostly because there's some history there with with Walt himself in that
Mm-hmm.
song, which it really really kind of gets me. Um, but it's just a really good movie. Um, so you want to kind of go back and get into maybe some classic older Disney things, and I think the perfect place to start would probably be Mary Poppins.
Have you watched the
Yes,
most recent one?
yes,
Was it any good?
yes. It is. It is. It's not. I mean, it's not on that level of the original, but
Mm-hmm.
it's it's worth a watch.
Nice. My first one is also a musical, and I gotta say, I am not a big fan of musicals. I'm just gonna be honest here. Like, I actually really struggled watching Mary Poppins when Brittany made me watch it a couple months ago. Like,
Fair enough.
it was tough. That's all I'll say. I I was having a hard time. Um, so I'm not a big fan of musicals, but Hamilton just blew me away. We
Did
saw
it?
it. Yeah. Um, we saw it live,
Yeah,
actually at the Benedum in Pittsburgh, and it was amazing. And then we learned that it was going to be, in film format on Disney Plus, last summer, and man, I just I watched it. I've watched it over and over again. I listen to the music all the time still. It's just I don't know what it is about Hamilton that the
it's
music is
very
so
different.
catchy
Yeah,
that
it
it's
is. Yeah,
um I think it tells a very interesting story about the founding fathers and everything, and has some interesting things to say. And I just man, I couldn't recommend this enough. So that's my first.
yeah. It actually took me like maybe two watches to really get into it. It's as far as musicals go, it's different. It's very
Hmm.
different. It's mostly all sung, and so you kind of have to get into that rhythm. And there's really not a break in between any of the it's total rhythm the whole way through. So it was
Yeah.
something for me to get used to, and definitely took a second watch to really get the appreciation of that whole thing. But
Hmm.
it's really good, really good.
Yes, it is.
So my next is moving into some sports territory. Uh, honestly, probably my favorite definitely my favorite hockey movie of all time. Up there with my favorite sports movies of all time. But my pick is Miracle with Kurt Russell. This tells the story of the 1980 U.S. Olympic team. One of the best training scenes of all time. You know, again, the scene. Um, I love this movie. This movie is emotional. It invests you in each of the characters, which is hard to do in something like this because you have so many different personalities there that went on to do bigger things in hockey. Even and you just get behind each of these characters in some way, which is really cool. For a team sport, to really kind of get that feel for each individual person there and what they were doing, and then definitely Kurt Russell does an amazing job as Herb Brooks. It's it's an amazing film, and even if you're not a
Hmm.
huge sports fan, hockey fan, it's just a really good family movie to sit down and watch. So, um, highly, highly, highly recommend Miracle.
I'm glad you put this one on there because it is a fantastic film, and it was nearly on my list as well. And I thought of another hockey film, I'm actually going to recommend a whole series here, The Mighty Ducks. And I've talked about it before on the show. I fell in love with the Mighty Ducks when I was a kid, and it really got me into hockey. And I still love hockey to this day. And the Game Changers series just finished up actually this weekend, so its finale aired. I haven't watched the finale yet. I enjoyed that show. Um, Again, it's not quite up there with the original movie or D2, which are my favorites, um, but yeah, I really have enjoyed it. And if you're looking for some hockey heart and humor, you're gonna find it with the Mighty Ducks.
Fair enough. My next, I'm going into kind of a 90s mode, a retro mode with Gargoyles. I talked last week about Batman being one of my favorite animated series. Gargoyles is up there too, maybe top five. Um, this was like I said, an animated show. I think there's only about 3 seasons in this one. Uh, but this is kind of in that same Batman animated series vein. It's darker. It starts off in kind of a medieval Scotland era where these gargoyles are the protectors of this kingdom in Scotland get cursed, frozen, and then woken up decades later in our time, which would have been like 90s back then. Um,
Hmm.
but really great characters. Again, really great voice work. Keith David is kind of the leader of this. He plays Goliath, the leader of these gargoyles. Um, Ed Asner does some more work. Ed Asner did some animation voice work back in the '90s. Apparently, he's in this again as well. If you're a Star Trek fan, there's also some Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis. Uh, Next generation fans will recognize those names. Uh, this is just really good animation again. So Gargoyles is up there for recommendation for me.
Awesome. So I'm heading back in time a little bit too with my next recommendation, and I don't know if this was late '80s, early '90s. I'm not entirely sure, but
I think yeah, late
Three Men and
'80s, if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken.
um, Three Men and a Baby, and there's also Three Men and a Little Lady, which I also enjoyed. But
There's also a new movie coming out.
really,
Or
a
series maybe.
series.
Yeah,
Okay.
series.
Maybe I
Yeah,
think I
yeah.
might have heard that. Yeah. Um, I'm a huge fan of this movie, the two movies actually, and I loved them when I was a kid, and it's something that I've showed Sydney, and she's fallen in love with them too. I mean, I always sing like the "Good Night, Sweetheart" song to her before she goes to bed, and it's just something that's carried on
Nice.
um, through the years for me. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of great nostalgic movies on Disney Plus, and this is one of them. I was gonna throw Big in there with Tom Hanks because for some reason I thought Big was on Disney Plus, but then I searched for it and it wasn't. So I
That would have been an embarrassing
yeah,
recommendation.
yeah, Because I thought could have sworn it was on there, but I don't know where Big is, but that's another good one back in that era. So
Yeah, so my next one, kind of going into documentary territory. There's some actually pretty decent documentaries, behind the scenes stuff on Disney Plus, and
there
my
there are.
favorite
Mhm.
of these, I was actually going to pick the one that you picked, but actually my favorite of these is called Waking Sleeping Beauty. Waking Sleeping Beauty is directed, produced, and narrated by Don Hahn. Don Hahn was also the producer of such animated classics as Beauty and the Beast and Lion King. Also a producer of Hunchback of Notre Dame. He also was a director and writer and host of Fantasia 2000. So he's done some really good stuff with Disney. Um, and he tells the story of Disney from kind of the mid 80s up through what's known as the Disney Renaissance of the 90s, getting into like, starting with Little Mermaid and going up through those 90s films, and how Disney kind of reinvented itself and brought itself back into the front and center of the animation world. Uh, but quick synopsis of this, kind of get you. I mean, kind of get you to understand what this is all about. This documentary begins in the early '80s when the Walt Disney Company was led by Walt Disney's son-in-law Ron W. Miller. Many new animators had joined the company after graduating from Cal Arts, but were hired in a time where animation was considered a dying art. Roy E. Disney, Walt's nephew and son of Disney co-founder Roy O. Disney, resigned from the company during a corporate takeover by Saul Steinberg, leading to Miller's ousting. Roy returned to the studio, a vice chairman at board of directors and chairman of the animation department. Roy employed Michael Eisner and Frank Wells as the new CEO and president, respectively. And then they go into how things like they touch on a lot of stuff. They touch on Beauty and the Beast, of course, which is pretty big for Disney back then. Um, Still one of the, I believe, still the only animation film that's ever been nominated for Best Picture, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
Um, so if you want to kind of get that story, see how kind of bad things were for Disney in the mid early '80s, uh, and actually you see some interesting names in there, like Tim Burton, did some work for Disney back then. But then see how things changed for Disney transitioning from the '80s into the '90s. This is a really, really great documentary.
Fantastic. I haven't seen that one yet, but like you said, there's a lot of great documentaries. One of them that I wanted to mention too that I didn't have on my list was actually the making of Frozen 2, which I thought was a fantastic documentary, especially if you're a fan of that film. But the one I'm going to talk about right now is the Imagineering story, which I think is a great place to start with documentaries on Disney Plus, especially if you're into the parks. And this was something we watched kind of leading up to our trip to Disney World back in September, and just looking at the creatives behind the rides, behind the parks, everything about the parks, and it takes you through time. It goes back to the origins of the Disney parks, and takes you all the way to like the present, um and just is a deep dive into how they created these rides, how they created different things for all the parks, and um it even looks at some of the parks that are overseas and international. So I think it's just a fantastic documentary. If you're at all interested in Disney parks, you should definitely watch it.
Even if you're not, the stuff that Imagineering
Hmm.
does is amazing. And I
Yeah.
fully agree. This is an amazing documentary. Um, but yeah, even if you're not so big into the parks or anything like that, the Imagineering story kind of giving you an idea of what's going on behind the curtains, and
Hmm.
it's really, really good stuff.
It is.
So my last pick, uh, Disney had some pretty good adventure stories, back in the 2000s, and some of those that have carried into more recent times were Pirates of the Caribbean, and it, it, I'm sure people have seen these movies by now, but they're always worth another watch. First one for me is still the best by far. Um,
Hmm.
and I went and saw that. so many times in the theaters. I fell in love with that movie immediately, and Johnny Depp, Jack Sparrow, those characters. I just Barbosa for me. I love Barbosa as a villain. Seeing him come back in the second movie blew my mind. Uh,
Yeah.
I I adore those movies, and even I know 4 and 5 kind of get ragged on, but I still like them. They're still fun. There's still good movies to just kind of turn your brain off and enjoy and have a good time, and swashbuckling action. So Pirates of the Caribbean is my is going to round out my list for Disney Plus.
That's a great pick. And I feel like Pirates is very seasonal for me. Like I feel like every like May/June, I really get in the mood for Pirates, and I think it's because those films were mostly released in May. And I just get in that mood to watch Pirates, and
Hmm.
we try to watch the series of films at least once a year, once every other year.
Hmm.
And I always love revisiting those. So great recommendation there. Um, my final one would be in the same vein, National Treasure. I'm a huge like Uncharted fan. I love like treasure hunting stories and everything like that. And this is one that's on the watch list that I really want to revisit, and I haven't watched in a while. But I think the first two National Treasure films are just great fun and adventure and that treasure hunting type of feel. And Nicolas Cage is great in these as well. So yeah, National Treasure would be my final one.
Love those movies. Love
Mhm.
those movies with all my heart, and I'm still waiting for the third one. I know there's some talk about like a reboot series or something like that,
Mhm.
but I still want that third Nicolas Cage movie. They
Yeah.
kind of set that up with the Book of Secrets, and
Mhm.
it's
Yep.
um I gotta have that third one. I'm interested in a reboot series. I'll be there for it, but I want that third one. It's not not
Agreed.
not negotiable, Disney. So
Agreed.
we have some, like I said before, obvious mentions, and I'll kick this off with Marvel. Anything Marvel,
Mhm.
I will tell you, there's some not so great Marvel stuff in there. There's a Fantastic Four movie or two that aren't so great. um, but even beyond MCU stuff, Marvel animation is there, and I mean, I have to mention X-Men. I've been talking about my favorite animated series in the past 2 weeks, with Batman and now Gargoyles, but X-Men is up there too. And if Batman's number one, X-Men might be number two. I mean, it's like X-Men is up there. It's an unforgettable theme with some unforgettable characters. Um, I would say X Men is a little more kind of dated into the '90s. Like I mentioned last week with Batman, it's kind of timeless. I feel like X Men's kind of married to that '90s timeline. It's
Mhm.
just some of the animation styles and music and things of that nature. But it's it's again, it's really good animation. There's other great animation stuff in Marvel as well. Wolverine and the X Men is a very good kind of follow up X Men series taking place a little bit farther down the timeline. Uh, but check out this other Marvel stuff. There's Spider Man, another great '90s animated series. From back then. There's other great animation as far as like Fantastic Four. There's a very good Avengers cartoon that I think got a couple seasons. Uh, just don't stop at MCU stuff. There's great Marvel stuff across the board. So check out, just explore Marvel. The original X-Men films are there as well. The third one just dropped a couple weeks ago, I want to say. So those are there for you to enjoy. And yeah, don't forget about Marvel.
Well, there's also this little thing that we like called Star Wars,
There's what?
and Star Wars.
Oh,
Um,
oh, oh.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and well, yeah, there's a lot of great Star Wars content on Disney Plus that I would highly recommend. I mean, the great thing too is that all the Star Wars films are now like in 4K on Disney Plus, which is really cool because I still don't own them all in 4K, so it's
Me
nice
either.
to have that option to watch them like that. And of course, there's some great animated series with Star Wars. You have Clone Wars, you have Rebels right now. Bad Batch is currently running. If you want to introduce the kids to Star Wars, you got Resistance. You have, of course, those animated series I already mentioned. You have some great Lego Star Wars stuff, including the holiday special, the most recent holiday special. Um, and so, yeah, there's just a lot of, and there was some new added Star Wars content too. If you want to get into some vehicles or some landscapes in Star Wars on the various planets, I think it's called the biomes.
Hmm.
Hopefully, I'm saying that right.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's just a lot of great Star Wars content there on Disney Plus. That the Mandalorian, of course, I think is just a maybe the best thing they've done yet in the Disney era, arguably. Even though I am a huge fan of the
I wouldn't argue with that.
seats, right?
I think it is.
I mean, I love the sequel trilogy. I love Rogue One,
Hmm.
but The Mandalorian just has something very special about it. So if you by some slim chance haven't seen that yet, make sure you watch it.
And I would add, I believe they call them Star Wars Legacy Star Wars or something of that nature on Disney Plus.
Hmm.
But this is the older stuff, and this is the things like the Genndy Tartakovsky animation, the Clone Wars that preceded the
Yeah.
the Clone Wars that we kind of know nowadays. Um, and that stuff's really good.
Hmm.
There's also like there's the Ewoks thing, and that's fun to revisit. So kind of like Marvel, don't just stop at the movies. If you haven't watched the animation, watch the animation.
Hmm.
It's not just for kids.
Yeah, because I gotta say, I'm not a huge fan of animated shows, but I love the Star Wars animated shows. There's
Mhm.
there's something about them. They feel like they really count. They're really a part of the canon and important to the overall story.
Agreed. So we have a couple voicemails to play. You want to do that now?
All right, I'm excited to hear these.
Hi, this is Denise calling. I wanted to participate in this because I do love Disney Plus. Um, what I love most about Disney Plus and what I watch a lot are the Christmas movies. I am so excited that it is May and summertime and I'm able to sit down and watch Home Alone or Home Alone 2. There's different, I think the Chronicles are on there. There are certain Christmas movies that are on there right now, and I'm very excited about that. Um, so that is what I like to watch on Disney Plus. I also like to go up to the princess section and watch some of the princess movies, like Princess and the Frog. Um, there's Snow White I like, and Cinderella, and of course Beauty and the Beast. So those are some things that I like to watch on Disney Plus, and I know my daughter also loves the princess one as well. But most of all, I'm excited that I can still watch the Christmas movies during the summertime, and of course I'm getting ready for Christmas in July, so I will be watching those. Um, and also, this is Adam Goswick's wife. So maybe sometime I can meet everybody on the show. But I just wanted to call in and tell you what I like about Disney Plus. Have a great day. Bye.
So yeah, that was my wife, as she so eloquently stated.
I was gonna.
And she's not kidding. She watches Christmas movies. It doesn't matter if it's April.
That is that is too
It's not
funny.
just Christmas in July either. If it's April, it can be August. It doesn't even matter. She's watching Home Alone. So yeah, that's no lie.
Well, I was gonna say, I was like, is she one of those people that celebrates like Christmas in July? And then she said that, so I was like, okay, yeah, obviously she is. That's great.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. So we have another one from a familiar face as well. So we'll go ahead and play that next.
Hey, Adam and Josh. It's Brittany, Josh's wife. So I wanted to call you guys and tell you that my favorite thing on Disney Plus is Magic of Disney's Animal Kingdom. It goes all behind the scenes of the Animal Kingdom, which I think is pretty cool. I really enjoy going to the parks. And Adam, I had a question for you from last week's episode. You said that there was a cameo at the end of the mall scene in Wonder Woman 1984. So I made Josh rewatch this last night, and I can't figure out who it is. So let me know. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Cool. Thank you, Brittany. I like how both of our wives introduce themselves as, you know,
As
Adam's wife
our
or Josh's
wives.
wife. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So that behind the scenes, first of all, the behind the scenes of the Animal Kingdom show is also really interesting.
It is.
You know, Animal Kingdom isn't this was like their slogan back when they first like it's not a zoo like and it's not a zoo because
No.
they go above and beyond with what they do for you know with these animals and some of the behind the scenes of what you know how much care that they put into these things and you know what they do beyond just making this a theme park or a zoo, really interesting stuff. So yeah, that's a great recommendation. I'm glad that she called in for that.
That safari they have there is one of the best things I've experienced involving animals, I think, too.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Um, so to answer the other question, and if anyone out there has not watched this and wants to, you know, remain surprised, throw up a spoiler warning here. So fast forward about 30 seconds or so. The cameo at the end is Linda Carter, who played Wonder Woman. Late 70s, 80s, something like that.
Okay.
And her role in that movie was Asteria. So she, from playing Wonder Woman back then to becoming Asteria, that Diana talks about, with the golden armor and all that stuff. She became that character.
Is she in the movie? Is she in like the end credit scene, or something like that, or is that
Yeah,
what it is?
yeah.
Okay, I thought so.
There's a scene that she's something almost falls on like a baby or something, and
Yeah.
she catches it and walks along, and she kind of looks at the
Mhm.
camera, and it's Linda Carter.
Okay, gotcha. Cool.
So it was a very cool cameo. It was kind of the perfect thing to kind of pay homage to her, and I thought it was really well done. So yeah, that's the cameo, the end scene explained.
Nice.
So
Thanks for answering that question.
you are welcome.
And thank you for the calls, ladies.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
We do appreciate it. Ready to wrap up episode 82?
Let's go.